People, Deluded, I'm back again. Now it's the quarantine break and, everybody's stuck at home. I've got a very special guest, someone that I've wanted to collaborate and do something with for a while. To call him a youth enthusiast, a youth connoisseur is really it's not even an exaggeration. He's fantastic at his job. Mr. George Bird, man. How you doing, my guy?
Oh, I'm fine, thanks. Are you all right?
Good. How you been doing in relation to the quarantine and whatnot, man? And what you been doing to keep busy, keep your mind
I just
elsewhere?
I've just been like writing articles and like listening to music and stuff. Really.
Okay. You must be stressing because, like me, you love Arsenal youth players, and you're always there. You're everywhere. You're not able to be there, man. So how's it like? What's your feelings on this whole Corona thing, anyways? Really?
Yeah, it's really difficult, but like nobody really knows like how long it's going to go on for, like anything really. So you just got to like make the most of it, and I think it's good to like because like life's so hectic. Like normally, it's like good to take a bit of time out and like look at like other things and assess like where you're going in life as well. Then.
Sit down and think and stuff. So obviously, I assume you have a journalistic background, and like I said, you bring out a lot of articles all the time. Anyways, how's this time or this? Nobody really wanted this break, but what has this break done for you in terms of how you're able to create content or just take the time to breathe and things like that?
Well, I haven't really been writing like as many articles. I've been doing like about one a week at the moment. But I've been looking like more at the players that are going to come through like next season, like assessing like who's been doing well this season and stuff. And also I've been looking at like how the former youth players have been doing and like where they've ended up. And it's like quite interesting really because there are so many players who were like really highly rated, but now like a lot of them are in like non-league or not even playing at all. So I wouldn't have had time to like research things like that normally. So.
Give us some names.
Um, well, for instance, like the likes of Connor Henderson, like James
He was my
Thomas,
favorite
players
guy.
like that, they were like so good at youth level, but now they're playing in like foreign countries. Like I don't know exactly where they are, but they're not like anywhere near the level where you thought they would. And then you get other players. Like Jack Jebb as well, who I thought was going to be a really good player, and
Same.
he's playing non-league as well. So it's quite surprising, really. And then you have people like Alex Iwobi, who was quite good at youth level, but he wasn't like outstanding, and now he's in the Premier League. So it just shows like you can never really know exactly like how a player's career is going to go.
Yeah, it's full of ups and downs. It's almost like the ones you don't really look at, and that's something I'm having to see now. It's like the ones you don't really look at, or the ones you might not necessarily be seeing game to game, typically are the ones to forge careers. So you really can't afford to count anything off. And I learned that lesson purely from a player called Luke Luke Ayling, Leeds guy.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to have a great career, like a decent career at a decent level. And to a degree he has, but I didn't think it would be to this standard. And I think he's a Premier League footballer now. So there's stuff like that. For me, the big one probably be J. Emmanuel Thomas. Like he had it all, man. Pace, physique, strength, skills. We hear stuff about attitude issues, but he just didn't get there, really. It was a big L. Happy you said Connor Henderson, because for me, I share you, man. I thought he was going to be a big player. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but when he was like 14 or so, wasn't the Chelseas and these sort of clubs trying to take him on, sort of thing?
Yeah, I think so.
And, and then seeing where it's gone for him now. At the end of the day, he's still a baller, but it's a bit of a tough one. So yeah, man. Clearly, if anybody doesn't know about you, George, he's a very good Arsenal enthusiast with a following for youth. I mean, he's the one guy that loves it more than me. So make sure you check out his stuff. His links to his stuff will be in the description of this video if you don't know about him. Where did the passion come from for specifically Arsenal youth?
Well, firstly, I used to like really enjoy watching the young players like in the League Cup. I remember like Nketiah and like he was like so fast and stuff. I couldn't really like believe it. And then there were like other players who weren't like as well known, but they just came through. But the first like youth match I went to, I actually like walked out at half time because I just found it like so boring. I didn't really like, but I was like really young. But like I think it was against like Chelsea and like Ali Adier was playing, but I didn't really understand like the whole process the players had to go through. But then like a few years later, I went like back again, and then I started to really like enjoy it. Like because players like Jay Simpson were coming through at that time, and then like he got into the first team like quite quickly as well. So yeah, but I've always like been interested in like players like rising up and like when they first get in the first team, like most people don't know them, and then within like a couple of games or something, they can suddenly become like really like popular players. So
yeah, I share the same. Like you said, I like to see the rise and things. Like for me, I've seen a bunch of youth players, but I'd say the one for me was potentially between, I'd say, Jack Wilshere, Cup, I can never pronounce his name, bro, and probably Maitland-Niles, to be fair with you, because Maitland-Niles, in fact, Bukayo Saka as well, and Nelson, and Emil. See, clearly there's a lot. But I just think Wilshere, if I had to pick one, like you saw yourself, head and shoulders above everybody, every game, especially that FA Youth Cup run. Like I was in school these sort of times, and I don't advocate bunking school and stuff, but at least with my friend run out of school just to go and make these games at the Emirates and wherever they are. And I really thought Cup was going to be an Arsenal first team player, and to a degree he's shown he's had a good career, but I'd say there's a lot of players, but them two really, Saka as well. Like you saw, Checo Trade Trophy, left wing, right wing, all sorts of levels. Saka's just been like, it's not really surprising to guys like us that he's, you know, he's a first team, he's taking it in his stride sort of thing. Let me ask you about, pardon, go on.
I can just say about Ben Nketiah as well, because I thought he was like 100% going to make it, because like Barcelona were interested in him when he was like really young, but I just felt like he was 100% going to make it.
Now that you say that, same, because wasn't him and Wilshere same sort of age group, sort of age range, and playing years up? Or
yeah.
What do you think it went wrong for him?
I think it's just mainly injuries, really. I think because, but he went on loan to Huddersfield and he did like quite well. But I think some of the other loans, like maybe he wasn't like completely suited to their like style and stuff. But I don't know. But sometimes I think we had like Van Persie and played like that ahead of him as well. So as a striker, it's like really difficult to get through. So yeah, but I think it was just unfortunate with injuries mainly. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's still done well at a time. I still think he's on Bournemouth books, right? He's still on Bournemouth books, technically. I could be wrong. Or he's on loan in the Championship. So he still had a decent career. But yeah, man, I'm happy you reminded me on him, because, yeah, you would have thought between him. I don't think Akpom was quite as good as Afobe, but he was another one I was looking at. Are they going to be these number nines to kind of break through and be that guy at the Emirates? And it just hasn't happened for any of them. Let me ask you about players, first and foremost, players that are kind of in the first team picture right now. Like you've seen the Emil Smith-Rowe's, the Reece Nelsons. I say it's a weird one personally, because when I look at Reece Nelson, if you was to give me Reece, Joe and Eddie, and you was to ask me 2 years before, you would have probably said Nelson would have hit the ground running first. And it's almost like out of the three, he's almost struggling in the first team environment the most. And I'd say there's almost parallels with Callum Hudson-Odoi when you look at him and some of their youth players. Like he was tearing it up at youth level, and you know he's still equipped to play first team. But in terms of getting to it, they seem to be both behind. And I know Callum's had injuries, and I'm actually not speaking in relation to his injuries. But yeah, what do you feel for Nelson and Emil as to why they're not potentially doing what Saka and maybe Martinelli are doing?
Well, I think maybe it's just like against certain players, they just don't know like how to take them on and stuff. It's not as easy like as at youth level. But I think with Saka and like players like that, he just seems like completely fearless. And like maybe some of the other players don't have that. Like I think Nelson sometimes he's got so much talent, he just like overcomplicates the play a bit sometimes. And I think he learned a lot in Germany, but perhaps he needs to go on loan again. And I think Smith-Rowe, he was doing like quite well at Huddersfield. So I think like if they both have like another loan like, under their belt, they could
be ready.
Make it, yeah. But I think Nelson did okay like when he was first in the first team like a couple of seasons ago. But I think he's one of those players who needs to play like every week really to build up momentum.
Player, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think like against Chelsea like this season, I think he did quite well.
Good game.
In some games he's done okay, but I think he just needs that momentum really. But
do you think Emil can break through and be our number 10? Well, let me make it easier, because you know yourself, when you watch youth players, people look to you to say something for gospel. I personally believe Emil can be a first team player. Just how much of a stature he has in the team is down to him. But as you know, we need a creative mid immediately at first team level. Typically, midfield is congested. He's someone that we all see potentially as an 8 and a 10. How far do you think he could go? Because I do think he can go quite far, but at the same time, you never quite know with these players.
Yeah, I think he can do like really well, but I think with him, like the injuries is the main factor because he just always gets stopped like whenever he's doing well. But if he can avoid that, I think he can like really like make a break. I think if Özil's still there next season, he could be like a backup to Özil maybe, and that'd be like a good experience for him. But a couple of times he looked a bit like overwhelmed in Premier League against
100%.
Everton, for example. But I think he's like Nelson as well. Like if he got given chances on a consistent basis, I think he could actually do quite well. I think he could definitely have a future at Arsenal and potentially for England as well.
That's one thing. I think we've got a good core base of players. I think Saka's clearly the star. I think Emil and Nelson, in time, they can be decent players. Like I agree 100 with what you said. I think Nelson, he just needs to play, get up to speed with things, learn how to do things quicker. Kind of threw in Joe Willock indirectly, and it's a bit of an interesting one because I haven't really got to ask anyone this, but do you feel internally within the club there is, as an outsider looking in, there is an agenda, or maybe agenda is not the right word, an emphasis on developing Joe Willock as a potential 10? I say this to you because clearly he's ahead in terms of development, ahead of someone like Emil, even though Emil might be better than him in some people. But you've seen, forgive me if I'm wrong, you've seen Uno Emre, Lomberg, Arteta, and I'm definitely missing out another manager potentially, but I'm pretty sure 3 to 4 managers at Arsenal who have taken this over now have played Joe ahead of Emil in that role. So do you think there's a sort of effort, or somebody has said something in this club that Joe is going to be our number 10, short, medium term, or whatever?
I think they definitely have a lot of faith in him. I'm not sure if it's like definitely in that position like completely, but they do definitely believe in him a lot. I personally think he's better like slightly deeper, but I think they do see him like as being capable of playing forward as well. But I think at youth level, like under 23s, he just used to burst forward and make these like amazing runs and stuff. But like at 13 level, you can't really do that. It's like much more difficult. But I think with him, he's got a lot of quality, but it's just he has like really good games and like sometimes really bad games as well. I think he needs to be like
that consistency,
a lot more consistent. He needs to get a bit stronger like physically as well, I think. But I think he's definitely another one who like he probably needs to go on loan, but you probably can't send them all on loan at the same time. But you need like squad depth and stuff. But I think definitely at some point next season he should go on loan because he's definitely got a lot of potential. I don't think he's got quite as much as like potential as Nelson or Smith Rowe really, but he could still be a good player for Arsenal.
That's just 100%, and I'm happy you said how you prefer him in the pivot because that's where I prefer him. Because if I was to look at it, or at least what I was seeing in Joe in the academy, he was ironically playing where he's playing right now, or playing further forward, and he was excelling. But when Arsene Wenger gave him his debut in the Europa League or wherever it was, I was pleasantly surprised with how what's the right word? How adept he was actually to defending and how much other qualities he had in his all-round play. And I agree with what you said. If he was to go gym and get a bit bigger and whatnot, he could be a real option of some sort in the pivot role. I don't really like him in the 10 position because I don't think his skill set is quite the final ball, the breaking lines and stuff like that. But I definitely agree with Joe. We can't not talk about these players and not speak about Eddie Nketiah. And you're someone who, I see a lot of your articles or have seen a lot of your articles, very detailed on Eddie Nketiah. He seems to be, I wouldn't say a favoured player of yours, but someone you've got a lot of time for and almost a brainchild of your website. What do you feel on Eddie, and has he surprised expectations? Maybe not necessarily yours, but has he? Do you feel he's excelling in expectations? How far do you think he could go? And what do you think the medium and long term holds for him?
Yeah, I've definitely had a lot of like faith in him when I first saw him at youth level, and he used to score like almost every week for under 18s and then the 23s as well. And I remember that Norwich game as well. Like that was like one of my favourite like recent games because he just made such an impact when he came on. But I think that Leeds loan was a bit frustrating because he really should have started more and he could have gone somewhere else instead and played a lot more. But I think working with Bielsa would have still helped him a lot, like tactically, and he would have learned a lot like, on the training ground. And then since he's come back, he's scored like quite a few goals, and it's a shame that like everything had to stop for him, especially because he was doing like quite well, and I think he could have finished the season like strongly and then cemented a place in the squad for next season. But I think for him next season, it probably depends on what happens with Aubameyang and Lacazette, and obviously like who comes in. But I think he could definitely still be like part of the squad. But I think it's going to get to the point at some stage where he'll want to be starting like regularly in like 2 or 3 years. So it's just up to him to prove it. But he's got like such a good mentality. That's what I like about him. Like if he misses a chance, he just keeps going and going until he scores. So, but the thing is, with Arsenal, we've got like quite a few other good strikers coming through, like Balogun and John Jules and Greenwood. So I don't know how they're all going to like.
Jesus Christ,
in, so, yeah.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned the striking thing because it's a touchy one. It's a very touchy one because I look at Sam Greenwood, I look at Tyrese, I look at Balogun. Like you said, they're all effing amazing. Like they've all got their own individual qualities. That like John Jules, he can hold the ball up, he can link play, he can score goals. Balogun scores goals for fun, and his general play is improved. Greenwood, out of all of them, is probably the best technically, and he's someone I think it's a weird one because he can play on the flanks. He can play as a 10. He can play up front. I'm starting to believe his future's as a 10, but I don't know that to be sure. I'm pretty sure you'd agree Sam's next step is, cementing his place in the 23s and making sure he's the best player on the field and then the first team. But for me, he's done very well at under 18s level, if you can say that, because you know yourself is considering we're defending our league title. It's been a season of up and downs. So I'd like to move on to the under 18s before the 23s. What's your feelings on, before we get into individuals, collectively, how the season's gone for us?
Well, it hasn't been a particularly great season. But we got quite far in the Youth Cup before we got knocked out. But I think we got quite lucky in like a few rounds. We scored like some late goals and stuff, and we almost went out in the third round as well. So, but it hasn't been a great season. We've had like quite a few experienced players, like Matthews and Greenwood's played a lot of games, but they just haven't had that like momentum or consistency this season. Really, I think there's been quite a few injuries. Like Taylor Hart's a good player,
had a long time with injuries,
but he was out for a long time. And Aziz has played a lot of games, but he's recently stepped up to under 23s, so that's affected them. But so the results haven't been that good, but to be honest, I don't really think Ken Gillard is like really the best coach, to be honest. But
why is that? Let me press you on that, because fans might not necessarily see this or know this. Everyone's allowed an opinion. Why do you believe such?
Well, I think that sometimes the substitutions he makes aren't particularly great, or he just leaves players on when they're not playing well. But quite a few parents have been unhappy with how he's hasn't really developed players as much as should do.
Shoehorns people into positions as well, if I'm completely honest. Yeah.
And I think they could have just had a much better structure in this under 18 team as well. The likes of Matthew Dennis and Alabiossi, they've been playing at right back. They're not really right backs. So
even though they haven't been there, considering that they've been playing all right, really. Yeah, it's just shoehorning people. Yeah.
But I think the main thing with the under 18s is in the past few months they've brought in some of the under 16s like Patino and Bandera and Flores and players like that. And I think so. Next season, the team will probably be much better. Really, I think.
I mean, like you said, with the under 16s coming, I think we've got some great talents. You've got Patino, who's starting every game basically for the 18s. Flores signed from Ipswich. Kion Edwards. You've got Amari Hutchinson. Who else is there? You've got Tyler Ferran. You've got Brooke, the fullback. I really collectively, and anyone that I haven't mentioned, Zabula as well. I haven't been excited about that group of players since the Nelson sort of age group and give or take them sort of guys there. And I say the last one I was really excited about was Wilshere's. How far do you think, again, you can't predict the future and not to put you in an unfair position, but I'm pretty sure you feel the same way as I do about some of these 16s. So just so I don't sound like a madman or anything, what is your opinion on collectively their potential?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have said that, who watched them regularly, they say that they're one of the best groups that they've potentially ever seen, really. But I think they could definitely do well. Some of them could even get into the under 23s as early as next season towards the end. I think a few of them have already been training with the under 23s to gain experience and stuff. So, but I think like the whole like under 16 squad at the moment is just really good, like in every position.
Yeah.
Even the goalkeeper, like Barry Mitchell,
Yeah, I
he played
really the
when he
ball.
was like 14 or something in the under 18s, and they got good defenders, midfielders, and
Mon
because
Louis,
normally, like,
Isaac.
yeah, normally like with Arsenal, you just see them producing like attacking midfielders or wingers and stuff, but now it's like the
Collective.
whole like so it's definitely like something to look forward to. But again, you don't want to like put too much pressure on these players, but I think they should be able to adapt well to under 18s and potentially even like push on like quickly next season.
Yeah. Like for me, I don't want to go too far because again, they have to work hard and I want fans to leave them alone. But I think Mon Louise, if he keeps developing, he could be one of, he's played at centre half and fullback. So I think he could be one of these defenders who progresses into the first team. I really have high hopes for him and Patino in particular, as well as Muro. I mean, it's hard to play favourites with that under 16s because like we've just named however many, they're all, potential is just a buzzword. But they've all got potential to try and make it here or have decent careers. You believe that, I believe that. Collectively, they're decent. With that, next season, I'm pretty sure I speak for you when I say I hope we have a good season, but a lot of them are first-year scholars. There'll probably be a lot of naiveties in their play. They have to deal with training day in, day out, and probably playing a couple of times in the week. Do you feel or do you agree that we might see a couple of additions at under 18s? Because I personally feel we might see one or two, whether it's foreign bought or sourced domestically. I do think we'll see a couple, maybe 1, 2 to complement the side.
Yeah, I think they do. I think maybe they need like potentially a couple of like older players, like 17-year-old or something. I think perhaps I'm not completely sure on this, but I think this might be the final summer where they can buy like foreign youngsters.
Yeah. Is there a new
Yeah,
rule coming in or something?
I think so because of like Brexit and stuff.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I think that is the case. So potentially we might see like a couple of foreign players coming in. And I think that with that as well, like now, like if they can't buy foreign players, they'll try and get the best like English players that they can at like 16 years old. Like, but I think they definitely need like 1 or 2 players next season, especially because like a lot of players are going to be stepping up, like the likes of Cottrell and stuff can't play under 18s next season, so
Greenwood as well.
they
They've
need
got it.
like more players. So yeah.
Speaking of under 18s, there's a couple of players that I would say, I wouldn't say limbo, but limbo. Like you look at Elabusu. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I don't know if he signed a professional deal. I could be wrong. But to me, right now, he seems like he's chasing a pro. I think he's done relatively all he can to get that. You look at Alfie Matthews, someone which probably regressed a bit, probably not had as many opportunities, probably not. He was someone that, you know, he's all looking at 15, 16 to kind of be the guy in the academy level. And it hasn't quite happened for him. And there is a couple of others. There's a couple of goalies that haven't played and whatnot. What do you think the future holds for, you know, these players that you described as limbo? Because looking at Alfie Matthews, he's got ability, and I guess he could probably stay at Arsenal. But if he steps up into the 23s, assuming Tyrese doesn't go on loan, Eddie doesn't go on loan, who he might need to play the occasional 23 game, Balogun's there, and Greenwood steps up. Is it just, am I wrong in thinking game time will be a bit difficult to come by for him? Or like, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think he was linked with Newcastle like in January, I think, and but I wouldn't be too surprised if he left permanently at the end of the season. I'm not sure if he's going to be offered a professional contract or not, but a couple of times where he's played with the under 23s, like in friendlies and stuff, he hasn't really looked like up to that level. But I think he could definitely play at that level if he got more experience and played like more often. But I think he is a player, like you said, who had a lot of potential when he was younger. But if you look at the amount of goals he scored this season and like last season, he hasn't scored like too many really for the
Yeah,
under
it's not
18s.
really.
But he's got like a lot of good
Done all
technical
right in
ability and
Dallas, but
stuff.
that's about
But
it, really.
yeah, he's got good technique and stuff. But I think it's probably better for him like to go somewhere and just gain experience somewhere else really, because he probably, like you say, won't get too many opportunities.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at someone like Josh Martin, who I believed he was a baller. He was another one on the radar. But to me, as a fan looking at games, I couldn't understand why he's not playing or why he's not in. I've seen him go to Norwich. He's playing 23s. He's been on the bench for the first team. Probably will make his debut if he hasn't at some point. So things can be done. Speaking of going back to under 18s, and it's just, I wasn't planning on asking you this, but it's come to head. We've signed Nketiah, forgive me for mispronunciation, last year. I've personally been impressed with him. The summer before that, or whatever, we signed Joe Lopez, who I think's had a decent second season here, made his 23s debut. What's your opinion on them two players? Because I think they're really good.
Yeah, I think Serjan's a really good player. I think he's probably, I could say, that one of the best in the academy
Yeah,
as a whole at the moment. I think he's definitely got a chance of getting into the first team if he
if he
avoids
works
injuries
hard.
and stuff. And yeah, but the thing with him, he's not too strong, like physically at the moment. But I think within a couple of years, shouldn't be a real
Gotcha.
problem, really. I think we've got to see how he adapts to under 23s because he hasn't really played for them yet. But I think he's definitely someone who's got a lot of potential, and he works really hard as well. So, and he's adapted quickly to Arsenal's style of play. He had a few trials, and he spent time at Hale End and stuff before he officially joined. So he's fully integrated into the Arsenal team. So I think he's definitely got a lot of potential. With Joel Lopez, but you can tell he's a former Barcelona player, with his technique and
Very good going forward.
yeah. But I think it's just his positioning sometimes is a bit questionable. But I think because he's 18 now, and normally at that age you'd expect players who have a lot of potential to be getting involved with the first team in some capacity. But he hasn't really
Certification, yeah.
so I think he definitely could get a chance in the future, but he's still got quite a lot of developing to do, really. But yeah, I think next season's a really big one for him because he'll probably get more chances to train with the first team and stuff. And yeah, but I think he's got a chance. If he improves quite a lot, then he could potentially make it as well.
I agree with what you said about next season because I think he's got a big thing for him because you'd imagine a couple of these under 23s, ideally they should be moving on. I think there's scope for him to really nail down that left back position at under 23s. And I know we look a bit well stocked at immediate first team level, but things can change very, very quickly in football. Just listening to you speak in relation to Kijan, I can't not be excited about him, man. What I love about him, he's a very much an Arsenal player technically, like we were speaking about earlier. He's got a good passing range. He can score from efforts. He's good at set pieces. What I like is he's nothing like Aaron Ramsey, but he runs in behind. He makes that run, and I really enjoy that with him. Again, I don't think everybody can make it here, but if I was to list centre midfield prospects, you've got Aziz, you've got Patino, you've got Cottrell, you've got Flores, you've got Bendera, Moro. You've got so many 23s to under 16s midfield talents, really, for me and people like me and you to really be excited about, man. Our potential is just potential, but I definitely feel, and I'm sure you feel the same way, that Hale End, London Coley should be, our gold mine. This is where first and foremost players go to first team or we make some big bucks on them. And I could say that's my pet peeve with Arsenal. When it comes to outgoings, we don't really make enough on them sort of players. But anyways, moving on to the 23s now. What's your feelings on the 23s? Because it's a bit different, obviously, because players it's more of a graveyard, I'd say. You've got first and second years trying to adapt. We all know 23s football is quite boring. A lot of players shouldn't be at this level. What's your feeling collectively on our 23s?
Well, this season, because quite a lot of players got promoted last summer, to the first team. It's basically been mostly players who are playing their first season in the under 23s, so they've had to adapt. And Steve Bold's been back as well, so it's they've had to adapt to his methods. I think Freddie Ljungberg was an excellent coach, and he helped so many players develop well. And Steve Bold is good as well, but I think a lot of them had a connection with Ljungberg. But Bold has done that quite well, and I think. But the thing is, there's quite a few good defensive prospects in there, Harry Clark and
he's had a great season.
Yeah, and Daniel Ballard only played one game for the under 23s because he came back from injury, but he's a player who has quite a lot of potential as well. But I think John Jules going on loan, it had a big impact as well because him and Balogun combined really well, and after that it wasn't really the same. But I think Balogun has carried the team at times because he's just done extremely well, and he's probably the one who I'd say from the under-23s is probably closest
to
to
the
like
first team.
getting into the first team at the moment.
Yeah.
I think Matt Smith as well, I have to say, has like done quite
Done very
well,
well in midfield.
and I think maybe he could even make his debut depending on like the circumstances next season, like, for the
Yeah.
first team.
I agree. I think a couple of them could make their debuts in that regards. But you mentioned defenders. This is why I wanted to get you here, because it reinforces that I'm not imagining things, because I would have said Harry Clark's potentially, the best player in that position at this moment in terms of playing. I feel Swanson's had a great season as well, as he did last year. He's Mr. Reliable. But then I look at Zach Medley. Now, Zach Medley is someone I look at with intense scrutiny. Not on him personally, it's because as much as I love this club, I love youth development. And I do think it's a season missed by him, because obviously Ballard's season got halted with the injury that kind of stopped him playing senior football on loan. But I think this was a season missed for Medley. I think he could have went out there to some level and got some games, at least even in January. Because is it just me, or when you look at Medley, the modern day defensive stuff he's got, he can bring it out from the back, he can play, he's got the passing range. I just feel he is incredibly naive defensively and quite raw. And a lot of errors he makes, if not necessarily his fault, they're self-inflicted, or they're things that could have been avoided. Considering his age and where he's at now, and potentially just the sheer number of centre-halves on Arsenal's books at first team level, let alone 23s, what's your feelings on him? Again, we can never rule out anybody making it here, but do you think he can make it here? And what would be your next steps if you had to choose for him?
Well, personally, I think he's got the potential to have a good career, but I don't necessarily think he's going to make it at Arsenal, if I'm being like completely honest. But I think he could still have a chance, like if he like makes the most of next season. I think the plan is for him to go on loan next season, but they've got to be like really careful with where they send him, because I think they are being more careful now, like with loans and stuff, and like doing more research and stuff. But I think he has to play like a whole season. I don't know at what level, but even if it's abroad or whatever, because he has to like gain experience with first team football. But I think when he's actually played like in the first team in like competitive games, he's done
all right, yeah.
Okay. But he makes like you said, he makes too many mistakes really. But I think I like that he's got like good like leadership qualities as well, and his height is like a major asset as well.
Yeah, he's a monster at that back.
But personally, I just think that he probably won't make it, but you never know. He could still do well, like if he really develops like next season.
So what would you say? What would you say is how do I make this make sense? It's in my head, I promise you. What would you say is the next steps collectively for these 23s and 18s? Well, yeah.
But I think a lot of the under 23s, some of them are probably still like too young to go on loan, really. But maybe in the second half of next season they could potentially go on loan. But it's going to be like, because those players got promoted last year, it's going to be really difficult for people to like step up to the first team, like even in like cup games next season, unless we get rid of a lot of first team players. But like the first team squad is like quite young as well, because you've still got people like Guendouzi and like Tierney and people like actual established first team players are young as well. So
20 sort of thing. Yeah.
So it's going to be really difficult for anyone to break through, really. So probably from this group, there'll probably be only like one or two who really get like proper chances. But I think Swanson, like you mentioned, has done well, and I think because there's like uncertainty at right back, you don't know what's going to happen with Cedric or Maitland-Niles, and even Bellerin still had like injury problems. So you never know, like he could potentially get an opportunity at some stage, like next season. But for most of them, I think they'll stay in the under-23s for next season, like for the first half of the season, and maybe like go on loan. But I've noticed since Emery left, more of the under-23s have been training with the first team. So Arteta must know, like he must be keeping an eye on like who's doing well and stuff.
Who's
so
doing well and whatnot, yeah.
And obviously like Ljungberg knows like all the players as well. So I think if they really excel in training, then maybe they could get a chance. But I can't really see like too many like of these under 23s like getting that many chances next season. But maybe if we're in the Europa League, then potentially they could get on the bench and things. But they'll have to be like really basic, I think.
Hmm. What would you say in relation to our loan spells? Because you touched on them, we have been very careful, and I think we have generally picked out some good places. I think sadly, you look at John Jules, you look at a couple of these players, they've had some injuries, and it's kind of halted their progress. John Jules in particular, you know me, I love John Jules a lot, so I follow his Lincoln, was following his Lincoln games every game religiously. The football was very hard to watch, but it was a positive. Who would you say has had the best loan spell? Because for me, it's probably Ben Shafe, just in terms of sheer playing and what you're getting out of it. I'd probably say him.
Yeah, I agree with you about Sheaf. I think he's done like really well, but I think he's probably a bit older than like most of the other loanees as well. And I think maybe this summer will be the time where he might leave permanently because he needs to play. He's a good player, but and he can play in defence or midfield. But I just can't really see him like fitting in at Arsenal.
Yeah,
But I think Smith Rowe was doing like really well until like everything stopped. So I think, and he was like actually showing what he could do like on a consistent basis. So yeah, I'd probably say Sheaf and Smith Rowe.
cool. That makes sense. Finally, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but Maitland-Niles. Now, obviously, he's come from Hale End. What's your feelings on this whole thing with him? Because I personally understand that he doesn't want to play right back. I can see how that could make you not motivated. But on the other hand, you're playing for Arsenal Football Club. You have an opportunity to play football. You look at someone who's quite a few years younger than him in Saka. Saka says all the time, "I don't want to play there," but you never get it. What's your feeling on Maitland-Niles? Would you sell? Would you give him a positive kick up the bum? What would go down? Because I love him a lot, but I do feel as a club, we need to stop holding everybody's hands, and some we have to be cruel to be kind. Like they might develop and become these players we've always thought, but we love this whole project stuff.
I never like to say like if like academy products should leave really, um, but I thought for like about a year or something that if he's not, because like he got left out under Emery, he got left out under Jumbo, and he was playing a bit under Arteta, but then like recently he hasn't been playing. I think if he's not playing like hardly at all, there's basically little point in him like being there. Really, he can like make an impact, and I think it's a shame that he didn't really get a run of games in midfield because
Yeah,
against Man United a few years ago he did like really well. But I think you just have to take like any opportunity you're given. But I think he was actually doing okay at right back like
that's why I
in
can't
the early
understand it.
weeks of
He was all
Arteta.
right.
But so it's a bit strange. But I think the only reason I'll be a bit skeptical about letting him leave is because of we don't have like too many like, homegrown like
Oh shit!
senior players at the moment. So because like Nketiah and that aren't counted until the next year. So
It
um,
could be it. It'd probably what Holding, Bellerin,
yeah, and
Maitland,
Chambers, yeah.
Chambers.
But
That's it, isn't it? Maybe
yeah, I think
Martinez.
yeah,
That's a good
but
point you made, George, man.
yeah,
Gosh,
but
that many. Damn.
yeah, but I don't know if you could like justify keeping him like just because of that or just include less players or whatever. But I think it's probably time for him to go, to be honest, because if he did leave, I'm not sure like where he would go. He probably wouldn't want to go as far down as the Championship. So
Prem stuff.
um, he'd probably be like mid to lower like Premier League team, and maybe he could do quite well there. But I can't really see like him getting many opportunities now at Arsenal.
Mm. All right, finally, I was going to leave it on that and let you go. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but it just came to me. Obviously, you watch a lot of youth football. You're up and down the country. Collectively, throughout the years, best and worst games. Like, has there ever been a game you're like, oh, Jesus, I've ran home. I've ran home from work. I've got my stuff. I've made my way down to this ground. It's raining. And we put in a performance like that. And equally, on the good side, like, it can't get much better than this. It was a terrific performance from the boys.
I think the worst one was probably in 2013. It was a pre-season friendly against Luton. Um, I think like we were playing in the Emirates Cup on the same day, and I decided to go to the Luton game instead. But then we lost 7-0, I think, and it was like actually one of the worst performances I've seen from Arsenal at like any level. But the thing is, they had like Bellerin and Crowley and players like that, but like nothing worked at all. So that was like completely terrible. I think one of the best ones was actually like the last one I went to actually, the Monaco game in the
Oh,
International Cup. That was like such a good game because it was just like end-to-end action, and it was, and yeah, that was like probably one of the best, I think.
okay, cool. So yeah, that's my guy George. I'd love to have you back on this. Thank you for passing through and offering your thoughts. Let them know your Twitter and all your socials. It's going to be in the description, but in case they don't, anyways.
Okay, my Twitter is at George Bird, and my website's arsenalyouth.wordpress.com.
All right, man. George, thank you for locking in, man. It's appreciative. Stay safe.